The Browns provided some early fireworks on draft night. They pass on Travis Hunter to move back, select Mason Graham. When the dust settles on this, it was a good move by the Browns. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Cleveland Browns brought out the fireworks on night one of the draft, trading back from number 2, drafting Mason Graham. It's a sensible move. I'll explain why. And speaking of Mason Graham, who they took with the eventual number 5 overall pick, the Browns are getting a good one. We'll talk about all that with you coming up. And I do want to thank you for being an everydayer with the Locked On Browns podcast, making this your first listen every single day. And remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. Bonus content on nights like this, draft night, throughout the weekend as well. We'll have you covered. So make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And, of course, the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discuss today or tonight, rather. And yeah, there's certainly, we also encourage you to get involved in the comment section at the YouTube channel here and share your thoughts on anything we discussed today. It's your team, so be part of the conversation. Now, with that said, the Browns made the stunning move. And I pushed back on wanting to call it stunning because it really shouldn't have been all that stunning to people that the Browns would consider or were considering potentially trading back from number 2. This was a conversation way at the start of the offseason that came up. And I even said at the time, like, to me, it's trade back or take a quarterback. And that conversation had evolved over time, right? Like, as we became infatuated with guys, Abdul Carter at a certain point, Travis Hunter most recently, it made sense for them to take one of these blue chip guys there and stay put and just feel really good about the player that they're getting and start sort of building the roster with great players. And that totally makes sense. But trading back, as much as I think it felt like it came off or that fans took it as a disappointment, maybe you took it as a disappointment. I actually think this comes away looking like a very sensible move for a Browns team that has a lot of holes to fill and is still sort of working to recoup a lot of the draft capital and add players from the last couple of years when they didn't have first round picks to use on top flight players in the NFL draft these last couple of years. So that's the biggest thing that I come away from all this. Like I get that Travis Hunter is this really electrifying player and a guy that we collectively, I think, is myself, the fan base, whatever, like everyone was excited to see what he would bring to the table with his team, how the Browns would use him, particularly on offense as a wide receiver. And I get why there was this kind of love affair, especially over the last couple of weeks with him as a player. I get why Andrew Berry sort of fed into that with the comments he made last week, comparing him to Shohei Ohtani, obviously calling him a unicorn, which is not a phrase that gets sort of thrown around lightly, if you will, when it comes to talking about a player. And I get where there's the disconnect between, well, how do you go call somebody a unicorn and then not take them at number 2 overall when you've ranted and raved about how great this guy's going to be at the next level and clearly at least talked through plans and what it would look like to have him in this offense and how they would utilize him. Again, all of that makes sense. But think about it like this, like Mason Graham, who they end up taking at 5, is not a slouch of a player by any stretch. Like he is a dog. The Browns are getting an absolute dog in Mason Graham. We're going to talk more about him specifically, what he brings to the table, why he's a good fit for this team, what it looks like with him on the defensive line. But I don't want to get into that right here. But I do think like it's not like they came away with nothing. They came away with the best defensive tackle in this class. I get it's not the sexy pick. It's not the quarterback. It's not the two-way player that can be a star wide receiver for you. It's not the running back like Ashton Genty. It's not one of these skill position players that the Browns desperately do need still to fill. But they still come away with a really good player that's going to be plug and play, start immediately, can be out there and contribute very quickly here. But on top of that, it's the draft capital that you get, and this Browns team is in a spot right now where they're sort of they finally have embraced this idea that they're rebuilding a little bit, at least slightly, right? And I think that came to fruition and really came to light when you heard at the owners meetings, Jimmy Haslam admit that they weren't going to force the issue with the quarterback situation, that they were going to be patient. They were going to build this roster the right way and not rush these decisions and the things that they had to sort of go through and the process that they had to go through. And when you hear that, it felt like finally they were accepting, listen, this might take a couple years to build. It's not going to be like a quick copy and pit like quick like instantaneous. We're back competing for the playoffs and the Super Bowls and all those different things. And so understanding where this team is at, accumulating more draft capital both this year because you added a pick in the second round this year, which that can't be understated here. Like the idea that the Browns now go out and acquire a second round pick. Like yes, offense is where everybody wanted this team to go. They still have a ton of needs to fill in offense, but you get 4 picks tomorrow, 2 first rounders, 2 second rounders, that you get a chance to potentially overhaul those positions with standout players. And by the way, with some of these position groups being so deep as well, most notably like running back, there's going to be some opportunities to fill these voids pretty quickly here. So you get 36 tomorrow. You swap fourth rounders. You move back from 104 to 126, but you also get the first rounder next year. And that's the kicker here. Like if a first rounder wasn't going to be part of this equation, I don't think Andrew Berry makes this trade whatsoever. But the first rounder being part of it for 2026 changes the game. And frankly, it sets you up where you can essentially now, no matter what happens this year, say the Browns are like an average team, say they win like 7 games, and they're sort of in that no man's land of the draft where it's like you're in the teens, not really in a good position to draft a quarterback because right now they haven't taken a quarterback. Now the draft's kind of wrapping up as we're doing this show. I'm sort of desperately hoping they don't trade up while I'm doing it, so that I mean it would be fun to react to it in real time with you, but I'm hoping they don't necessarily make a trade because that's a whole bunch of work I got to get to as well. But regardless, like they're probably going to take a quarterback in this draft, yes, but it doesn't behoove you from taking one next year either, and that's the key thing here. Having 2 firsts next year is immensely valuable because it's either going to mean if the Browns are bad or really bad, maybe they're drafted in the top 3 again and they can get that quarterback that they really want, or if they're average or whatever, or they end up being good, you still have two, like by accident, you still end up having 2 first round picks that you can use, package together with some other draft capital to move up the board and draft that potential franchise quarterback, assuming the Browns are sort of looking at it that way. So the extra first rounder next year gives them a lot of flexibility in the future. And like I said, because they're embracing that idea of a rebuild, the fastest way to get this team back on track is going to be accumulating top talents these next 2 drafts, this year and next year. The Browns set themselves up nicely to do that exact thing. You can't blame a team that is in rebuild mode for Andrew Berry talked about this, maximizing the value of the number 2 overall pick, and I think he did that with this move. He's still got a really standout player. I understand where you're not necessarily getting the offensive stars that fans are dreaming of. I get that, but when the dust sort of settles on this thing, I hope that you can come to terms with the idea that like Brown still took a great player in Mason Graham, which we're going to talk about coming up, and on top of that, they add a whole bunch of draft capital that gives them flexibility both this year and next year to add more really good players the next tomorrow, most notably on Friday, with 2 second rounders and 2 third rounders. Plus, you have some flexibility next year with that second first rounder to do some things, or just straight up add 2 really talented players in the first round. However, that sort of plays itself out is obviously going to it remains to be seen. But as I look back on this, I felt like did I think the Browns are taking Travis Hunter? Yes. Would I have loved to see Travis Hunter here for the Browns? Absolutely. But there's nothing to really be upset about when it comes to this move, other than the fact I get the gripe of, well, hey, where's your offense going to come from? And we'll talk about that a little bit more here as I break down what Mason Graham brings to the table, because that is the one legitimate gripe I think you could have at this point with them making this move, thinking you were going to come away with like an all-star, first round offensive talent and not necessarily seeing that come to fruition. But we'll check in on that. We'll touch base on that here coming up in just a second on the Locked On Browns podcast. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Take advantage of the all in one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long term goals. Managing your money with your partner is even smoother as you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. There's nothing quite like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge in the electric arena atmosphere. And Gametime gives you a chance to be part of it with their stress-free last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices in the app go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. Last year, I used Gametime for the first time. I bought tickets to see Ohio State, Michigan, and actually saw Mason Graham wreaking havoc against the Ohio State Buckeyes. It was a disappointing result as an Ohio State fan, but I did get to see the Buckeyes, who went on to win the national championship in person last year. And now, Gametime is my go-to app for buying tickets. In fact, I just bought tickets to a concert for my wife's birthday later on this fall. Last minute deals. You can save up to 60% when you buy last minute tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute ticket, lowest prices, guaranteed. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means that when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post Your Job is LinkedIn's new feature, which can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job 100% free. All right, so despite all the fanfare, despite all the emotions of the Browns deciding to not take Travis Hunter and pass on him and trade back to 5 and end up with Mason Graham, I think the move makes sense. It's a sensible move for a team that's going through a rebuild right now and trying to turn this thing around as quickly as possible. You are adding a bunch of talent in the next couple of years that's going to really transform this roster. And Mason Graham is now one of those pieces. He comes in as the best defensive tackle in this class, an absolute beast in the trenches, close to 300 pounds, really super aggressive. Andrew Berry said in his post pick remarks tonight that he fits the DNA of the Cleveland Browns. And I think that's well said, because you think about Jim Schwartz's defense. It's an attacking front that loves to rotate guys in and out. Mason Graham is going to have a chance to do that and feast on this defensive line up front, get after the quarterback from the interior. And when you really break it down, take a look at the Browns depth chart on the defensive line as it stood sort of coming into Thursday night, right? It was Shelby Harris, guy who's getting older. Isaiah McGuire, former, mid-round draft pick who is still sort of trying to find his place. They did sign Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who they're hoping can sort of contribute as an edge guy. Jeremiah Wusu, or as a linebacker, Jeremiah Wusu-Cormo is obviously there, but you got Myles Garrett, you got Alex Wright. Mike Hall last year they added as a defensive tackle, but you lost you lost Dalvin Tomlinson. You moved on from him as a June 1st cut. You also don't have Zadarius Smith coming back this year like you did a year ago. This team has always had edge players that sort of complemented Myles Garrett well. They haven't necessarily had that great middle of the defense guy, other than I guess year one of Dalvin Tomlinson, who I think showed you something. But this last year he took a step back. You now can generate pressure from the inside with somebody like Mason Graham alongside Myles Garrett. And the best news in this situation, in this setup, is that Myles draws so much attention that it opens up somebody like Mason to now be able to feast from the interior and make some trades, make a major impact almost immediately. I'm assuming he's going to be slotted in as a day one starter. And yes, the Browns also did go out and add from the they did add Malik Collins, obviously, as well from the 49ers at defensive tackle as well, a guy who I think actually had better advanced numbers than what it maybe seems. And so they now have this nice pairing in the middle of guys that can, eat some space, really wreak some havoc, cause some problems for opposing defensive lines. And let's face it, like whether or not you felt good about them trading back and taking a defensive guy when they have so many offensive holes to fill, at some point, this team was going to have to address the defensive line, whether it was defensive tackle or whether it was edge. Now, you could argue they could have just stayed place and stayed put at 2 and taken Abdul Carter. I'll hear you on that. Like, it makes sense. He's one of the blue chip guys in this class. But trading back and still getting a guy who, like, once you get past like those first 3 guys, and I don't think anybody in this draft was generational, by the way. The grades are all sort of similar, but Mason Graham like stands out as an elite level guy in the middle of a defense that can really cause some problems and is just going to straight up like bully dudes in the trenches. And this team needs that. They need somebody who can just like play aggressively, get after the quarterback, being able to generate pressure from the interior and the exteriors. I think something the Browns haven't necessarily had a bunch of at this point in this like during this regime's time here. So you now sort of have that with a young guy that you can sort of build around. To Andrew Berry's point, fitting the DNA, I think he certainly does do that with this defense and the way they like to play. It to me, it makes a ton of sense. And like go back and watch the tape if you haven't done so already. Like I mentioned it during the ad read for Game Time. Like I was at the Ohio State Michigan game, and you go back and watch that tape. Like he wrecked that game, not single-handedly because he had some other talent on Michigan's defensive line in general was really good this year, was the strength of their team, but like he was noticeably causing problems for Ohio State, who gets a little jittery in those games. There's nerves involved, and when they got a little bit in their heads in terms of trying to play against Michigan and win a certain way, and Mason Graham was a big reason why they absolutely just destroyed their entire game plan and made life difficult for them all day long, and why Michigan won that game in the end the way that they did. That's like That's a perfect game of in terms of what Mason Graham brings to the table. On top of some of his tape from the playoff run the year before where they won the championship, like he's a standout player. He's going to be phenomenal. He had 3.5 sacks last year, 7 tackles for a loss. Like it's not just getting after the quarterback. He can cause problems with teams run games and what they're trying to do in terms of trying to find those gaps in the middle of the defense and explode through. He clogs those lanes up. He causes a lot of problems. It's a solid pick. It was a need for the Browns that I understand was probably secondary to a lot of their offensive needs, because they just have so many of those right now, which is why I get some of the frustration there. If you're sitting here tonight saying, how do you come away with a defensive guy? Like, how do you trade back and take a defensive guy with still a quarterback to address, wide receiver now to address because you didn't take Travis Hunter? We all kind of assumed that was at least one of those boxes checked going into tonight. Running back still to check, offensive tackle still to check, and you're frustrated because they didn't address any of those things. I get it. I 100% get that, and that's probably the biggest criticism to come out of night 1 of the draft for the Browns is like you didn't address any of those things to this point. But because they added the draft capital, they did 2 picks in the second round tomorrow, early on, by the way, where they can still get guys that can be immediate starters, and 2 third rounders to boot to end the night tomorrow. It is going to be like a real opportunity to still turn this roster over despite waiting on offense tonight specifically. So I understand if you're walking away tonight feeling disappointed to a degree. That's totally fine. It's within your right as a fan to feel that way. But I still feel that tonight was a win for the Browns in a number of ways. And yeah, like does it mean that they're probably waiting on a quarterback like to find their franchise guy next year? Most likely. But that's not really a surprise, right? Like we knew that going in that this class might not bear enough fruit at the quarterback position to find enough of those guys for teams that need them. So that was a reality before tonight anyway. I think the Mason Graham pick for where they got him and the draft capital that comes with it by trading back is still a move that should leave fans feeling like tonight was successful overall for your Cleveland Browns. And there's a comment here during the live stream. I don't usually throw the comments up, but I'm going to do it here real quick. JJ Dibble says, trenches, win or lose football. I think that's well said. Browns know that. Their defensive line is going to be superb with a move like this. I'm already envisioning like him feasting because of the attention that Myles Garrett gets on the outside from the interior. Like it's an element the Browns defensive line hasn't necessarily had. and it should bode well for them. Now, where their points going to come from, they have time tomorrow to answer that with some of these other picks that they have here on day two. It's not looking like they're going to trade back up at this point with a couple picks to go, but we'll see. But yeah, there's still some room to improve this roster, plenty of it, and we'll see what they do tomorrow with the first of the draft capital, or with one of the first major additions they got from in the trade from Jacksonville with that 36 pick. 33 and 36 is when they'll pick tomorrow. Chance to add two really good players, likely on offense, to contribute to this team here pretty much right away. So another episode down with you, Dog Pound. This is just our sort of post round one or during round one reaction. So I still will have an episode drop for you Friday, reacting to all this again and talking through some different things, guys that are still available going into day two. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already to make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out our Locked On NFL Draft Show. You can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, obviously in the midst of a great playoff run right now, or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will obviously be talking to you again real soon, Cleveland, because we got a whole weekend of draft to still get through. Have a good night. Peace.